I think struggling with patience is the antithesis of Facebook activism. And
Yes.
sitting up here is also a constant reminder of how 50,000 likes does not make a movement. There was a point in time where Jamie and I were having a conversation with Reverend Lawson, and we were talking to him about a successful Facebook campaign where a young woman had called attention to the credit card companies and gotten all these people to like write online petitions. And he was like, how many? I'm like, yeah, 50,000. He's like, do you realize like the smallest of worker movements in Poland involved 500,000 people getting together, lighting candles on a regular basis? The bus boycotts involved thousands of people and engaged an entire country through media presence. And it was a kind and gentle rebuke, but it spoke with a lot of power about how if our activism stays within our chain of comfort, it has very limited volume. I was at a presentation once where a man was offering, how do you gauge the effectiveness of your nonprofit organization? He said, of course you have the standards that are given to you by the governments and the funders, but the most effective gauge of a nonprofit's effectiveness is how much dissatisfaction do you create. And when people get dissatisfied, you're creating that, then they can disrupt that, they can be disturbed and connected and do something. And it's been, I think, particularly frustrating for us to sit and like talk with Dr. Harding and talk with all these great mentors and see how young people have got a few things confused about what power on the streets is represented by. I think that we are very effectively blocking ourselves off and saying like, oh, well, you know, we've got these people talking on Facebook, we have a dialogue. It's like, no, that's a bunch of people shouting at each other most often. A lot of times it allows people to be very angry, and in no ways do I feel like it creates a great deal of empathy. So I do think that there is a very real pressure to use the internet to its fullest abilities to bring people together and then get them together, actually, in a room, talking. And I don't think that we can just place the blame in any one situation. We can just address what we need to do now. We can choose to sit down and look at the continuum of stuff that should be disturbing and pick a part of it. I think there will always be things that could disturb us, and I think there's all these things that we experience where our hearts do break, and that means that we are tasked to speak about it. Even just on a one-to-one basis, I think that's where things will happen and change. But if we continue to be silent, if we continue to think that just putting a Facebook update or a Twitter message will be sufficient, or just like telling stories of people our ages, that's not what we need. We need to pop all of our bubbles in many ways and look at the different ways that we're accepting the tyranny of our own comfort so that we can be useful and break these shackles that we've kind of signed up for.
But tell us where you spent your childhood first, dear.
Denver, Colorado. See how brief that was? I think part of like the panelist responsibility should be in terms of moving things forward, because I do think it's going to take some shaking up, because we've gotten too patient and too comfortable and too cute and too sophisticated and too educated for our own good. But I think you guys need to start ambushing audiences. You need to have this kind of event and then throw up some H-Rap Brown or, you know, some people like that, because this, you know, that's things that, I don't even know why I'm out of breath because I was born and raised here. But that's things that a lot of times can begin to kind of shake the comfort level loose when people see folks with that kind of audacity and they see the competency of how to use that audacity and how to use that indignity and how to use that anger. And the other thing is, there isn't anything about this discussion tonight that makes me personally want to go out of here and do anything but not come to another one of these discussions, because it's so placating. There's a time and a place to be nice, and there's a time and a place to be respectful, And there's a time and a place to hold hands and sing "We Shall Overcome," but there's also a time and a place to roll up your sleeves and get in some people's face, whether it's Facebook, whether it's somebody's office, whether it's a letter, whatever, and do that kind of thing. I'll be impressed when you show up and we're talking about Harriet Tubman and how she had to put a gun in people's face. I'll be impressed when we stop showing the typical, make everybody feel nice and cozy and comfy kind of leaders and start looking at some of the other leaders that are out there. There are a lot of young people out here today who are doing some things. Show them. And when you guys continue to keep showing the same slides and the same people and saying the same message, it's not very helpful, it's not very productive. So I think that one of the things we can start doing in terms of making the best use of our time, start ambushing the audience, ambush it in love, however it is you want to say it. But this kind of thing, if I brought my kids here tonight, there's not a whole lot that they would hear tonight that would make them go out and say, whoa, let me just bust a move in my classroom. What are those next steps? What are the things that's making schools like the J.S. Chick Elementary School in Kansas City, Missouri, which is an elementary school, test off the charts as far as college testing standards are concerned? Put them up on the board. Talk about those types of things. So that's my comment. I appreciate all the, the pleasantries and all that kind of stuff. Donnie, I love you. This is cool. And you're doing the right thing because there's something for everybody. But just so you know, I'm not feeling tonight at all.
Okay. I would just say that thank you. Thank you very much. Everything is contextualized. Medgar Evers literally had half of his body blown to shreds precisely because within a particular context, he absolutely was seen as a troublemaker, public enemy number one, someone who needed to be buried not 5, 10, but 15 feet under the ground, right? And so I agree, I hear you, absolutely. But I think the whole notion, whether it's ambushing the audience, making folks feel uncomfortable, there were moments in the late 60s, we have to be really honest, where some folks, and H. Rap Brown was not one of them, but there were certain activists who would make a point of making folks feel uncomfortable, go on to the next city, and the folks that were left in that particular city where were that activists, any of you in the room who consider yourselves activists would call such folks opportunists. Okay, there are other words for them too, who might indeed agitate, but were on the first thing smoking out of town, and grassroots folks were left to catch serious amounts of hell after they left. So I think it's okay to be educated, to be sophisticated. I agree that there's got to be passion. The whole point, especially about the whole the losing ground report, is that we obviously do need to wake ourselves up, okay? But this freedom struggle, like many freedom struggles, is multifaceted. If you are interested in a different perspective and a different legacy, for instance, David Hilliard, former chief of staff of the Black Panther Party, will be on the Auraria campus February 21st, okay, to give you, a particular perspective. But the thing that I really want to bring us back to, and I think it's really important to understand, because I deal with students around this issue all the time. When we talk about Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Colorado, for that matter, when we talk about the nameless individuals whose bodies would be found tied to cotton gins at the bottom of ponds because they refused to back down in the face of terror, I don't think we in 2013 can not that you're saying this, but can minimize that or say that those particular struggles aren't incredibly important.